Waccamaw River near Conway is a concern to many residents in Horry County. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down one-on-one with the Lowcountry's morning meteorologist, News 2's Josh Marthers. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores.
Meteorologist Josh Marthers. It's so
Good to see you, buddy.
Likewise.
I hate that we usually meet up under such bad circumstances as what's been going on over the past few weeks, but it's always good to see you, I should say.
Yeah. Well, let me stop right there because obviously 2 weeks ago we were concerned about Florence.
Yep.
But now we're concerned about the river levels rising.
And you know, leading up to this storm, that's what was one of the difficult things of trying to communicate was that the threats here in the Lowcountry could actually come a week after the storm. And now that's what we're seeing, is, in particular in Georgetown County along the Waccamaw River, where we've had a record surge of water coming down the Waccamaw through Conway. You know, we've been talking about this, seeing the images coming out of there, and it looks like the river will crest later this week at a record 22 feet. Well, that water has to come down, and it comes south through Georgetown County. And the thing is, it's been a long time since we've seen this amount of water come down the Waccamaw River. Really unprecedented in recent history. We really don't know what this is going to do. So the river flood warnings are now up, and evacuations are being asked to take place now in parts of Georgetown County, and it's just going to be a very long week. Let's put it that way.
From 2 weeks ago to right now, what has those river levels done as far as damage for those particular areas?
Well, we don't know yet for Georgetown. In Georgetown County, it's just now getting to where we're starting to see those river levels rise. But if you look at Conway, and you see what's happened in Conway and parts of Horry County, that water's coming down. Now the river itself widens as it gets into Georgetown County, because you know it empties into Winyah Bay right there in Georgetown. So will that help absorb some of it? We think it might, but at this point, based off of everything we're seeing up in Horry County, what the emergency management folks in Georgetown County are suggesting is let's get you out if you're in these particular areas. I think it's probably a good idea because it is a mess in Conway right now.
Was this ever predicted before Florence?
This is what we were talking about when we said, you know, Florence, wherever Florence makes landfall, you know, the immediate threat there is going to be the damaging wind and the storm surge. But the greater overall threat from this storm will be the rain that occurs after, and then the river flooding that occurs after the rain stops. And this is clicking right along about the way we expected it to, unfortunately.
The models.
Yeah.
Which one were you particularly focused on?
You know what? I think everybody's attention when we were 3 or 4 days before landfall was the European, which shifted south and took the storm actually as a direct hit in North Carolina, then 2 hours south near Savannah. And I remember looking at that, and I'm just going, that doesn't make sense. And with the European, you know, usually that model is so darn good, and you feel weird even questioning it. But what you have to remember is a computer model is guidance, not gospel. That's the line I use. It's guidance, not gospel. It's guidance that you use to make a forecast. You have to remember a computer model is being told it has to produce a result. Well, the atmosphere doesn't necessarily have to follow that rule book, so to speak. So what I think the European was showing was the stall. And we talked about that here on News 2 today, and Rob did during the evening shows as well, that, you know, we need to kind of pump the brakes on this thought that we may be seeing a storm turning due south down the coast and then coming back in, because that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Number one, it's rarely happened. Number two, the most logical sense for a storm would be for it to come inland due to the friction to actually be pulled into the coast and then just drift around in the terrain for 2 or 3 days, which is what happened. The downside of that is the flooding that we saw. All of that rain from that slow drift, you had some areas seeing 3 feet plus of rain in eastern North Carolina. Well, that's now all draining into South Carolina, and that's been the problem.
When you stack up Florence with Matthew and Irma, where does it go in your mind?
Well, you know, Matthew was one of those storms where we got everything out of it. You know, we got some wind, we got flooding, we got storm surge flooding. And Matthew, for a good part of the PD and eastern North Carolina, was very similar to this one. I think Florence is probably a step up. You remember Irma, though, was a quick one. That was like a 6 to 12 hour thump that we got out of it. It was a good thump, but it wasn't that long duration type thing that you saw with Florence. I think that's the thing that makes Florence stick out more than anything, is that this storm has actually been North Carolina's and now parts of South Carolina's Hurricane Harvey that hit Texas last year. Very similar type thing.
Wow. The future, what's next? Anything in the tropics?
You know, there are a couple of things out there right now that we're watching, but nothing that is very significant. And that's the good news. We have a little disturbance northeast of the Bahamas that's trying to flare up. You can make the argument that that's actually a piece of Florence. It's actually a little small piece of energy that broke off from the main circulation and got trapped down there. It won't be Florence again. Don't worry about that. But it could enhance some rainfall if it decides to get pulled north into North Carolina a little bit. But it's not a significant threat at this point. We've got Kirk, which is headed toward the Caribbean. It's been downgraded today. Don't think that's going to do much. Something to watch, let's say, 5 or 10 days from now, but the next few days, really not a big deal. And then we have a couple of other areas of interest out there, but nothing that is a major threat to anybody right now. That doesn't mean it won't be down the road, but right now we don't have anything significant that has our attention.
I don't want to be biased, but I love the summer. Except when I'm not, wearing this type of
Yeah, I get you. And we don't have any end to that really in sight. Quintin, I know you're like me. We both like it warm.
Yes.
Right now, the next 10 days, we're going to be at normal or above. It looks like it's going to be a little unsettled, off and on rain for the next 7 to 10 days, but we don't see any big chunk of fall air coming in our direction. Unfortunately for fall lovers, it's not in the cards. For us, we're kind of like, score, we got another week.
Right. That's amazing.
Yep.
Well, the Lowcountry's morning meteorologist, Josh Marthers, thank you for your time.
Quintin, always good to see you, buddy.
Likewise.
Thank